Ladies, gentlemen, and genetic anomalies, what is happening? I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. And if not, I hope your day gets a little bit better. We are finally back. Finally back. It has been way too long. I've been on a bit of a break from streaming, mostly because of all of the Thanksgiving holiday festivities. Spend time with family and such. Had some siblings who had been out of town. They came back into town that I wanted to spend time with, so therefore I did not stream as much as I usually do. And this is not an apology, by the way. This is an explanation. I think I've said before on this stream, or at least on this channel, that I stream for fun. I stream for fun. I do not prioritize streaming. So, if I have time to stream, I stream. I stream because I enjoy it. But it's not a job. So, if I don't have time to stream, I don't have time to stream. Now, generally what I like to do is record enough content for you guys so that I can upload a video every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on the Not a Newbie Highlights channel. But unfortunately, I actually ran out of videos. I thought for sure that I had enough videos to cover last Monday, but I didn't. And maybe I'll make up for it on the stream, record enough videos. But yeah, for whatever reason, I missed this Monday. And I do slightly apologize for that, because I should have had, I don't know. I feel like I have enough streams, like older streams too, like still on my computer, that I could have edited and made another video. But I guess I just wasn't aware that I ran out. But again, like, I was spending too much time with family to really care. So, I know I broke probably a year-long streak of having 3 videos up every single week on my schedule. But at the end of the day, boo-hoo, I mean, I don't even have any viewers anyway, so it's not like a billion tears are going to be shed over this. Yeah, I didn't see anyone in my Discord complaining or anything, because they even made an announcement too. I was like, hey y'all, there's not going to be a video, and no one cried or anything. But by the way, if you want to shape the content that I talk about on my streams, there's this thing. I want to say it's right here. Yeah, right here is the link to my Discord server. You go there, wait about 24 hours or so. I'll give you all the privs that you'll need in order to communicate with everyone. You'll be able to send in requests for things for me to talk about when I have time to stream. I'll take a look at those requests, pick through the things I think are good or bad or whatever, and then I'll talk about them on the stream. So you get to have at least slight control over what I talk about on my streams. So if you want to have the power to form and shape the content that you view on YouTube, well, now's your chance. Join the Discord channel, be part of the Bread Gang, and yeah. And also I have channels too to talk about all types of things. So even if you don't want to shape the content that I talk about, you can come on and talk about politics, talk about religion, talk about all types of things, movies and shows. Yeah, you can talk about pretty much anything you want to in the server. So I do, want to encourage people to join the server if they were not previously aware of it. And if you forget, hey, it's always going to be on the screen. Now, I actually do have some things scheduled with some of my siblings, so I'm not going to be able to spend too much time here on the stream. But so many things have happened lately. So many things have been happening in the news that I have been wanting to talk about, that I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to do a little stream. I'll talk about as many things as I have the time to talk about. I did some show prep. And hey, if the show prep ends up being more extensive than the time that I have, then hey, at least I have stuff to talk about later on this week. And yes, I will be doing multiple streams this week. But anyways, diving into the big news, Hunter Biden got pardoned by Joe Biden. And this is crazy because he had made numerous statements saying that he was not going to pardon Hunter Biden. I believe this was before he got convicted and even after he got convicted. The interesting thing that I saw was that even the people on the left could not bring themselves to find some sort of justification for this. Now, some people on MSNBC, I listen to MSNBC and CNN and stuff. Yeah, some people on MSNBC, they were like, well, Hunter Biden was being targeted unfairly because of his connection to Joe Biden, right? You know, if there was someone less prominent who would have done the same thing, you know, that person wouldn't be prosecuted at all. Beyond, of course, the obvious fact that that's just not true. I think it's also funny that those same people were like, oh, Donald Trump is going to use the same claim to falsely say that the same thing is happening to him, even though we all know that the same thing's is happening to him, right? The same thing is happening to him where he's being prosecuted unfairly, specifically because of his prominence as well as his success as being a leading right-wing figure. But in general, it's been very, very encouraging to see people on the left actually acknowledge, hey, you know, Joe Biden has crossed the line here. Even if it's for the purposes of saying, hey, well, you know, Donald Trump is going to use this to his advantage and perhaps pardon more people than he should. Still, I think it's fine. I think it's great that the left is complaining about this because that's actually, you know, what I used to do. When I would hear right-wingers on talk radio back in the Barack Obama era, right, when he was president of the United States, hearing them say, oh, we need to bring back the fairness doctrine. I'm like, wait, why? Because progressive talk radio is dead. All you're going to do is just like absolutely obliterate how much airtime right-wingers have on the radio. This power could easily be abused to actually fight you. Like, why are you doing this? So, I mean, when I see people getting mad at something a Democrat does just because a Republican might do the same thing against them, I'm not too upset because, first of all, it's a step in the right direction, right? It's a step in the right direction. And second of all, that's exactly why these sorts of powers need to be evaluated or use of these powers should be scrutinized when they're abused or they open up the door to abuse, because it's like, hey, you know, anybody could do this, right? Even if theoretically, let's just say for the sake of discussion that pardoning Hunter Biden was the right thing to do, it does open the door to like, hey, let's say Kushner gets some kush, right? Which is illegal. Let's say he does that. And then Donald Trump decides to pardon him. Well, he shouldn't do that. Now, some right-wingers have been saying, oh, we need to reevaluate the pardoning system. Like I think I heard some people saying that on the Glenn Beck program this week. Completely disagree with that assessment as well, because the reason why this power exists is because sometimes the power to prosecute people is either abused, or people get convictions wrong, or people get convicted for things that are no longer crimes. So there is a use for pardons. I think that pardons should continue to exist. It's just that, you know, sometimes that power can be abused, as it is very clearly has been abused here. This is from the AP. It says Biden pardons his son Hunter despite previous pledges not to. President Joe Biden pardoned his son Hunter, sparing the younger Biden from a possible prison sentence for federal felony gun and tax convictions, and reversing his past promises not to use the extraordinary powers of the presidency for the benefit of his family. The Democratic president had previously said he would not pardon his son or commute his sentence after convictions in the two cases in Delaware and California. The move on Sunday night comes weeks before Hunter Biden was set to receive his punishment after his trial conviction in the gun case and guilty plea on tax charges, and less than 2 months before the president-elect Donald Trump is set to return to the White House. By the way, one thing I find interesting about this whole story, I'm not going to read this whole thing because I'm sure that you guys probably know most of the details that are in here, is the two things that this opens up, right? First of all, there's this,
Biden
right? So there is this headline here, and I was actually hearing people talk about this on News Nation as well. It says Hunter Biden pardon raises new questions over Fifth Amendment loophole. So there are some people saying that Hunter Biden won't be able to plead the Fifth because there's no way for him to get convicted. And so since there's no way for him to get prosecuted or convicted on anything, he does not any longer have a Fifth Amendment right to not answer questions like under oath or whatever, out of interest of not convicting himself. The byline here says Hunter Biden's prosecutorial immunity from his presidential pardon could be used to compel his testimony in congressional hearings, some believe. I think this is an interesting theory. I would like to see more legal scholars weigh in on this. But one thing to take into account is that Joe Biden didn't just pardon Hunter Biden. I think he said that you can't prosecute anything connected to Hunter Biden that occurred over from the past 10 years, starting with the year that Hunter Biden went over to Ukraine or whatever and joined the board of Burisma until basically right now. So because of that, the types of things I think you would want to ask him questions about, you can't ask him because he was involved with them. So it doesn't really, at least from my high level understanding of the situation, I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to be like, oh well, we can just ask him any question we want and he can't plead the Fifth. Also, there's always been the legal loophole of I don't recall that he could also whip out as well if needed. So he could effectively plead the Fifth without actually literally pleading the Fifth. So there's that as well. I don't think this has legs, but it's interesting to see if people build up crutches for this thing. Very curious to see if that ends up happening. Also, there's this story. This is an older story. I guess this article was published by Fox Business on December 3rd. I've heard this story a few weeks ago, where Hunter Biden was accused of owing over $300,000 in unpaid rent. Says here, Sean McGuire alleges Hunter Biden failed to pay his family more than $300 in rent in 2019 and 2020. Now, some people might be saying, oh, well, Hunter Biden has been pardoned, so it's fine. And also, look, this happened in 2019 and 2020. This happened within the bounds of 2014 to 2024, so you can't prosecute him for this, right? Well, it depends on how this is viewed. There are many crimes that are both state crimes and federal crimes. Hunter Biden is only pardoned from federal crimes. He's not pardoned from state crimes. So because I believe this could be prosecuted as a state crime, he could actually get prosecuted for this. And the thing about this whole situation is that Hunter Biden very possibly could have just gotten a slap on the wrist. This is the insane thing to me. Okay? Hunter Biden could very well have just gotten a slap on the wrist for the crimes that he committed. But by pardoning Hunter, I think Joe Biden has actually teed him up for even more scrutiny than he would have ordinarily gotten, because now you're going to see people going after him for state crimes like this. People might be going after Hunter Biden for this $300K of unpaid debt that ordinarily I don't think people would even care about. Like, this was a story, I think, like 2-3 weeks ago, and no one said anything about it. I don't think anyone said anything about it in the following days after the story was exposed. So you could see Hunter Biden get prosecuted for these state crimes that he ordinarily wouldn't get punished for. And he also, I think, might get sentenced, not unfairly, but he might be sentenced to an unusually harsh punishment to kind of make up for him getting pardoned of crimes that we all know he committed. So I think that Joe Biden actually sort of teed up Hunter Biden for kind of a rough few years of potential future prosecutions in various states. Now, maybe Hunter Biden will flee the country. I think that's one benefit of him facing state charges instead of federal charges, is because if he was facing federal charges, then other nations would be obligated, especially nations that are friendly to us, would be obligated to extradite him back to the States, but because he in the future will only be facing state charges, most likely, he doesn't have to risk that same situation, that same fate. So he could flee if he wanted to. He could go to the UK, he could go to Canada, and I don't think they would extradite him even if he ends up getting charged. So there's that as well. But very, very curious that Joe Biden would even decide to do this. I don't know. I mean, maybe he doesn't want Hunter Biden to go to jail, but did we really think that Hunter Biden was going to go to jail? I think that the risk here was just not worth the reward. Also, of course, we have people on the left complaining that Donald Trump might use this as an excuse to pardon himself or more people than he ordinarily would have, which is certainly a possibility. I don't think is particularly likely, but it's certainly possible. There's just a whole can of worms here that this opens unnecessarily. Like, my guy, you're not even hungry. Why are you doing this? I don't understand. I don't get it. There's also this story here to discuss. This story right here is pretty wild. I saw this headline briefly, and then I pulled up these few articles here I want to look at. But we've got this clip here from NBC News Now as they discuss the situation as well.
We are following breaking news out of South Korea, where there's been a series of chaotic moves involving the country's government. Protesters flooded the streets of Seoul after the president declared martial law. But then lawmakers voted to block the measure, and eventually the president gave in and reversed the martial law order. Now,
the interesting thing about this is, at least from my understanding of the situation, North Korea has recently mobilized its troops. I don't know if mobilizing is the right word, but prepping its troops, doing public drills, and readying their military for active combat. And it's something where people have sort of been looking at the periphery and they're like, are we on the cusp of North Korea announcing war on somebody? But usually these forms of escalation, by the way, first of all, they're not unusual. They happen all the time. Usually nothing comes of them. But of course, there is danger of being part of the nothing ever happens crowd, because eventually those people get nuked, and then but before they even have the time to wonder what happened or why that might have been the case. Being part of the nothing ever happens crowd is not particularly wise to do. So it is important to look at these things and be like, that's strange. Maybe something is up. Maybe this is the type of thing that will exacerbate or instigate World War III, depending on your perception of whether or not World War III is actually happening right now. Something to think about. So I wasn't quite sure if that was it. I've sort of removed that as a reason for declaring martial law in my mind, because the mobilizing of the troops, I think, is something that started weeks ago. I think maybe even over a month ago. So I'm like, well, why do the martial law now? People have been worried about North Korea, mobilizing their troops against foreign states for weeks now. But why now do the martial law? There was no new news about Kim Jong-un declaring war on anyone or anything like that. Like, this just makes no sense to me. But let's see if NBC News Now has any additional details here.
Let's bring in NBC News international correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer, who's been watching all of this. Janice, a lot has happened in just the past few hours. Can you walk us through and maybe why some of this is happening?
By the way, my younger sister got me this. Oh, let me see if I can get it to focus. Come on, focus. That's usually what gets it to work. There we go. Focus. My sister got me this. I don't know what it is. It's in multiple colors, though. This one's hazelnut cream. This was Mandel. And this is Milch Praline. I don't know. I don't speak hoity-toity, so I don't know what this means or says. Anyways, I'm not gonna do like a reaction or anything, but I'm gonna be eating these. I just figured you guys might want to know. Oh, what's that? So
Well, this has been an extraordinary turn of events in South Korea, with President Yoon Suk-yeol agreeing to lift martial law, forced by an emergency vote in the midst of protests. Now, in declaring martial law in the first place, Yoon said that he had no choice in order to safeguard constitutional order. It was basically a move against the government, citing what he called despicable pro-North Korean anti-state forces. He's been in a bitter standoff and political gridlock with opposition members since he was elected in 2022. So the main opposition party condemned the move as unconstitutional and immediately defied the president with this vote to revoke martial law. Large crowd.
Now, I wonder if they're going to get to this, but I wonder if the concerns are accurate or true, because, something like that doesn't shock me. I'm sure that we probably have Russian agents in the United States in our government. Well, actually, no. Maybe is that a bit too conspiratorial to say that we possibly have Russian agents in the American government? Maybe it is. But I will say this. If there were Russian agents in the American government, that would not entirely shock me. It would not entirely shock me. I don't think it's terribly hard for a foreign government to infiltrate a different nation, right? We've seen this with China in Canada, allegedly. China basically controls the government of Canada now. To do that, I don't think would be too difficult. You just got to fund the right people and get the right people in the right places. Not terribly difficult. So, or it could all just be grassroots support for North Korea. I did notice a strange amount of online pro North Korea propaganda lately over the past 6 to 9 months, which I did find very odd and strange. So maybe that is causing genuine support in South Korea for North Korea. But either way, of course, I'm not going to support initiating martial law, because you have, cohorts in the military supporting a foreign nation. Like that's like declaring martial law because the majority of people in Congress support China. Like, bro, if you abide by free speech principles, which I do, you should be able to support whatever political cause or political group that you want, so long as it's not like a terrorist organization, which North Korea is not a terrorist organization, and neither is China.
Defied the president with this vote to revoke martial law. Large crowds have gathered outside the National Assembly building in Seoul. People were also inside the building. Windows have been smashed. Police are all around it. There's still some confusion about exactly where things stand, because under the order, political activities are banned, protests are prohibited, media is censored, but military officials have been told to pull forces back. Now, the Biden administration is in contact with the South Korean government and is monitoring the situation closely. President Biden has yet to comment on the declaration of martial law, but South Korea is a staunch ally of the U.S. There are some 30,000 American troops stationed in the country to guard against North Korea. This is a political situation that's still shaky, it's still unclear, and people in South Korea stunned by what's been unfolding overnight. Kate?
Yeah, I can imagine, and it is the middle of the night there. Janice Mackey-Frayer, thank you.
But why now? That's what I don't understand. Why now? Like, what happened today that, wasn't the case yesterday? What changed? I don't understand. So, yeah, this is from NBC News. South Korean president reverses martial law declaration after immediate opposition from parliament. President Yoon Suk-yeol said he would strive to minimize the disruption for law-abiding citizens who uphold the constitutional values of the Republic of Korea. So it sounds like he's still going to crack down on people who are pro-North Korea. But it's just not officially martial law. Hold on, let me see here. I love this. Yo. So he was talking about how the president, what's his name? Yul was saying that, like, what was the word? What was the verbiage that he said?
Breaking news out of South Korea, where there's been a series of chaotic moves involving the country's government. Protesters flooded the streets of Seoul after the president declared martial law. But then lawmakers voted to block the measure, and eventually the president gave in and reversed the martial law order. Let's bring in NBC News. And Janice, a lot has happened in just the past few hours. Can you walk us through and maybe...
Well, this has been an extraordinary turn of events in South Korea, with President Yoon Suk-yeol agreeing to lift martial law, forced by an emergency vote in the midst of protests. Now, in declaring martial law in the first place, Yoon said that he had no choice in order to safeguard constitutional order. It was basically a move against the government, citing what he called despicable pro-North Korean anti-state forces.
Right, so he said that there were pro-North Korean anti-state forces. I love this. The People's Power Party, which I think is the opposition party, leader Hang Dong-hoon insisted that Yoon, quote, personally and thoroughly explain this dire situation in detail, which is like an ultimate troll statement. When he's basically saying, like, okay, sure, buddy, prove it. I love that, like, because part of me is like, bro, I'm American. So there's only so much about South Korean and North Korean politics that I understand. Actually, no, that's not a reason. It's just my ignorance. But still, there's only so much South Korean, North Korean politics I understand. But I was like, what changed? Why did this happen? And that's literally what the Power Party is saying too. They're like, oh, please personally and thoroughly explain this dire situation in detail. Now, actually, if this was an excuse or opportunity to sort of cull society from people who are pro North Korea ahead of a potential face-off with North Korea, I can understand why he might do that, because what you do is you prevent yourself from facing resistance while you're trying to fight North Korea. Now, does that mean that it's okay? No, it doesn't. But it just means it's understandable. So maybe that's what's happening. But it's just not entirely clear. So it says here there's a quote. It says here, there's a quote from Yoon. I'm declaring a state of emergency in order to protect the constitutional order based on freedom and eradicate shameful pro-North Korea anti-state groups that are stealing freedom and happiness of our people. Yoon said on the country's YTN news channel. He added that this would protect the country from the threats, of North Korea's communist forces. Yeah, that's not. Yeah, that's not clear at all. That's not clear at all. You know, honestly, bro, I am keen to co-sign the People's Power Party, their statement, and be like, bro, explain yourself. This is ridiculous. But thankfully, there's enough democracy in South Korea that this disaster was avoided. Hopefully, Yoon doesn't try to pull something like this in the future, and hopefully he doesn't still try to crack down on people who have pro-North Korean sentiments. But, you know, I think at a certain point, all we could do is just cross our fingers, because, you know, when it comes to other countries, you never know what's going to happen, especially when they don't have as much democracy or freedom as America. So, yo, Mr. Pizza is here in the chat. What is up, Mr. Pizza? I'm actually going to wrap up the stream soon because I've got stuff to do with my siblings, but I do have one more story that I want to cover and talk about. But bro, I have so much show prep that I'm definitely going to do another stream later this week. So if you want me to talk about something specific, throw it into the React Request channel in my Discord server, and I will add that to the list of things to talk about next week. But there's one last thing I want to talk about. It's actually not political for once. And I wanted to talk about this. Because I watch a lot of so let me start by saying this. I collect physical media. And the reason I collect physical media is because I was sick and tired of watching content and not owning it. There are streaming services where shows keep on joining the streaming service and then leaving again. It's all too confusing. You know, no one wants to subscribe to 5 streaming services so they can watch 5 shows. Nobody wants to do that. Very, very annoying. And so because of that, I'm like, bro, look, okay. Basically, I'm not going to watch anything unless I own it, unless it's something where it's like not time sensitive, but it's like I'm not going to wait 9 months to watch a season of this show. You know what I mean? So that's basically what I've been doing. I've been watching like almost exclusively things that I own or things in movie theaters. There are a handful of things I watch on streaming, but generally I will watch things that I own. I absolutely love this. It's been a wonderful experience. I have a Plex server and I have a shelf. And that's basically all I need for 99% of my entertainment needs. But I will say this about the 1%. And this is going to be a hot take because a lot of people have been popping off about this lately on YouTube. But streaming television is not that bad. It's not that bad at all. Streaming services are not that bad. And I'm talking about on-demand content, television programs and movies. I'm not talking about sports. That's a whole different conversation. But it's not that bad. And here's why. Streaming services are a great way, first of all, to discover programs, right? If you're collecting physical media, I wouldn't recommend running around buying a bunch of things that you haven't seen before, because ultimately you're spending hundreds of dollars on things that you may or may not like. Now, sometimes you could do research and be like, oh, okay, I accept this risk, right? Or be like, oh, I think I'll like this thing because it's by that director I like. But generally, I wouldn't recommend spending a bunch of money on things that you haven't seen yet. That's just, I think not smart and not wise when it comes to collecting physical media. Because eventually, like, let's say you buy a bunch of like garbage Westerns and you spend like $300 on them and you don't like any of them. Well, then now you're out $300 and, you just have a horrible viewing experience of all these dozens of bad movies, right? Streaming kind of helps you avoid that. For 15, 20, however many dollars a month, you can check out a show that you would have never ordinarily watched or purchased on your own. I'm actually experiencing this recently with my one of my siblings, as well as my dad. We watch shows on streaming together from time to time, and they're watching 3 shows at once right now. They're watching the reboot of Hawaii Five-0 from the beginning. They're watching Blue Bloods from the beginning, and they're watching Homicide: Life on the Street from the beginning. And it's been fun, like, dipping into these shows with them, because through this I've discovered the gem that is Homicide: Life on the Street. Fantastic television show. I've only seen maybe a couple dozen episodes, and it's already, I think, my number 3 show, my number 3 favorite show of all time. Now, I am someone who's also somewhat of a completionist. If I start a season, I really want to finish it, unless it's so bad that I'm like, I'm not finishing this. If it's not bad, I want to finish it, usually. So, I am going to go back through the series and watch it all the way through at some point. But for now, as I'm discovering this show and enjoying it with my siblings, it's a great experience to be able to just sit down and watch a show with them, especially since I'm not paying for them. I'm not paying for it. And they're not paying relatively much to watch this show. And I use Homicide as an example because if you go to Homicide, it's on Peacock, I want to say. Go to Peacock, turn on Homicide, you'll notice something interesting. Homicide is in 4K on Peacock. Now, if you're a collector of physical media or you're someone who buys digital media, you might also notice something about this series. You can't get this series in 4K if you just buy it outright. As a matter of fact, you can't even get it in 1080p. Going even further, you can't even buy this in standard definition on digital, at least from iTunes, which is the only digital purchasing platform that I use. At least on iTunes, you can't buy Homicide: Life on the Street at all. And the only way to own this, from what I can tell, is by getting a DVD. I'm sure someone in the comments will correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I'm sure that this applies to other shows, so I'm fine with using it as an example. The only way I can own this show, or the only way I will own this show, is if I buy a DVD. The viewing experience of watching Homicide: Life on the Street on an ad-free tier Peacock is going to be better than the experience of me watching it on a DVD. Now, some people might be like, oh, the bit rate. Oh, the potential streaming issues. Oh, the glitches. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I've had no issues. Now, I will say, I think we use a, whatever was the most powerful Roku device 2 or 3 years ago. I think like a Roku 4K Premiere. So I will use the caveat that we use that as a streaming device. We have a 4K television. The 4K is SDR. The 4K TV is SDR, but it does have 4K, so it's 4K enabled. And yeah, that's what we use. The experience is impeccable. The app runs smoothly. There are no glitches, very little buffering. The subtitles work. There are no quality drops at all. Now, to be fair, we do have a Wi-Fi 6E compatible system, and not everybody has that. So some of you guys might notice quality drops if you're using Wi-Fi 5, or you're still using the 2.4 gigahertz frequency for whatever reason on your Wi-Fi infrastructure. But it's impeccable. And some people might complain about the bit rate, but like, I know for a fact, if I get a DVD, it's not going to look as crisp, and it's not going to look as clean as a 4K restoration of Homicide: Life on the Street on streaming. And so I see all these people running around saying, oh, physical media always has the better experience than a streaming service. Streaming services experience will never compare to the experience of having it on physical media. And to an extent, I agree, right? If the internet goes out, if the power goes out, nothing's going to stop me from watching a DVD on my computer that is connected to a UPS, right? But at the same time, if you want the most pristine, highest quality experience, sometimes you've got something that's on DVD versus something that's streaming in HD. And, people might say the bitrate this, the bitrate that, but if you just look at it with the naked eye, well, I never look at things with the naked eye, because if I did that, I wouldn't be able to see. But in general, if you just look at it with your eyes, the HD almost always is going to look better than the standard definition release, unless you've got a really bad internet connection or it's a really bad upscaling. So, I'm not one to say, don't collect physical media. I'm a big fan of physical media. I've got more physical media over there that I need to unbox. But at the same time, I would caution people against being absolutists. Sometimes 4K isn't the best way to watch something. Sometimes just you got to go back to the Blu-ray. I know that there's a lot of controversy over the Lord of the Rings 4K, one of the Alien movies 4K releases. I think Terminator has a controversial 4K transfer, and some people choose the Blu-ray over that. I think some people just assume that if you go to the thing with the highest bit rate, you're going to have the best experience, and if you own it, you're always going to have a better experience than if you stream something. But that's just not entirely true. So I would caution against being an absolutist. What I would say is, rather, look at your entertainment experience and determine what it is that you value, right? Do you value discoverability? If you value discoverability, then, owning content might not be the way to go. If you can afford a streaming service, that might be worth your money more than spending it to own things that you might not like. Or maybe it's video quality. Well, maybe some things are out on 4K that are going to look better than a Blu-ray that you have or a DVD that you can get. That's something to consider. But maybe you're also a hardliner of being like, oh, well, I never want to experience commercials. And these streaming services have been adding commercials to what were previously non-commercial tiers that didn't have commercials in them. They were ad-free. I understand that perspective too. There are claims that you can go with both ways. But I don't know who else. I don't know who watches TV and is like, what? I really hope that this has a higher bit rate than YouTube TV. Like, I don't know anyone who thinks like that. I think about that sometimes when watching live sports, but in general, no one thinks about this when watching TV. So I would say before kind of like falling for the absolutist arguments of people online who are sort of trying to, I don't want to say that they're being shills, but or grifters, but people who are sort of being cheerleaders for a particular format or particular entertainment experience. Before, sort of just bending to their arguments, just take a step back and figure out what it is that you want from your entertainment experience. Do you want the same things that these YouTubers want? Maybe not. Physical media isn't for everyone, and streaming isn't for everyone either. So I would say, don't pick one poison when the alternative might be an elixir. Actually, that's a terrible way to put it. I don't know why I said that. That's so cringe. No, but yeah. But generally, just think before you stream and think before you buy. Maybe the experience that you're getting isn't what you're looking for, and maybe it's time to switch. Maybe it's time to switch from streaming to physical media. Maybe it's time to switch from physical media to streaming. I think that you can have a healthy balance of doing both, but I just wouldn't blindly put yourself in just one camp or the other, because ultimately you might be isolating yourself from either the best viewing experience or checking out new shows and movies that you might like, and I don't think that either of those are good things to do. Alrighty, so that's going to cover everything that I have to talk about today. That should be enough content to hold us over for another week. I wish I could talk about more things, but I do need to hang back with my siblings. We are about to start the first Sonic movie. I'm very much looking forward to it. We are going to try to cruise through this franchise, because we do have Sonic 3 coming up soon, which we do plan on watching together. But anyways, I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning into the stream, even if, just like in this case, it is just one of you. Mr. Pizza, I appreciate you tuning into this stream on this Newsday Tuesday. I hope that sort of lifted your spirits for the 30 seconds or however long you watched the stream. I've got way more things to talk about, right? Like that mogul male deserved to die. The YouTube channel, not Ludwig, right now. I'm not pulling a central committee, okay? Calm down. But yeah, talking about why mogul males actually shouldn't exist. And this comes after me mourning its death. And some other stories. I will go back to my series of reacting to the Agenda 47 videos once the news cycle calms down. Yeah. That's all I got for you guys. So, hope you guys enjoyed the stream. Join my Discord server if you want to influence the things I talk about on the stream and send in react requests. And I will see you guys in the next stream. Peace out, y'all.